This is Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. An informal chats with top business moguls as they share their stories of failure and success in a fun and relaxed way. Get entertained, educated, and unlock the secrets to success.
Welcome to Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman. I have a friend and a fantastic guest, David Cabrales, who is an attorney and lobbyist with Foley and Lardner. David, welcome.
Well, thank you, Ronnie. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Now, we've been together at a number of different events, and you're always the life of the event. You're exciting and you're fun, and just hearing your stories and your experience and your background has just been incredible.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure the keynote speakers at those events would like hearing you say that, but I'm flattered, and thank you, and I'll take it.
So you're at a law firm. It's a very well-respected law firm doing some really incredible work, but I'd love to hear about your experience and background. I know that you grew up in far west Texas, as you described, and you work for a former Texas governor. But tell me, what is it that you do, and how did you get there?
Sure. So I'm an attorney and a lobbyist with Foley and Lardner, and like you said, it is a national law firm. I was in the legacy firm of Gardier and Wynn, which was a Texas-based law firm, and we merged several years ago with the larger platform of Foley and Lardner, and so now we're coast to coast and in all the major cities. And so I started my career as a litigator, handling all types of commercial disputes in state court and federal court. I even got one case where I got to sit at counsel table before the U.S. Supreme Court. That was a securities case, and regrettably we lost, but I like to think it was close, but not quite there. And so I left private practice for a few years and became the general counsel for Governor Rick Perry, which was a great job, and we can talk more about that.
Energy secretary, right?
Well, he was, but he was governor. He was governor when I knew him, and I once a governor, always a governor in Texas.
Right.
And so it's almost like if you've ever been a judge, even if you go back to private practice, people call you judge.
They do.
So we call him governor.
Okay.
Even when we see him today. But coming out of that experience, I ended up veering more into the lobby field, lobbying down in Austin before state government.
Tell me this. So how did you end up in Governor Perry's office? Did you just complete an application and send it in? Did you go on Indeed? How does that work?
Well, not quite like that, but not as far off as you think. So if you remember, Governor Perry became governor in January of 2001 after George W. Bush got elected president, right? So Governor Perry was the lieutenant governor at the time, and constitutionally he elevates to the position of governor. So I was at a Dallas Hispanic Chamber of Commerce event, and I met this interesting gentleman who ran a community newspaper, Spanish language in West Dallas. And so we resolved to have lunch.
Right.
And, it took us 3 weeks or so to finally I guess we met right before Christmas, so it was sometime after the holidays.
Right.
We got it together. And he was late getting there, and he was very apologetic and said that he was late because he had gotten a phone call that he had to wait on a fax to be sent to him for something that somebody wanted to run in his newspaper.
Right.
And I asked him, well, what fax was this that you had to wait on? He said, well, the governor's office called me. They want to run an ad to try to find Latinos to apply to be on boards and commissions, because Texas is a citizen government state, so most of our agencies are run by volunteer citizen board members or commissioners. And so I was intrigued, and I asked him if he wouldn't mind sending me a copy of that, and so he did. He faxed me the copy, and I reached out to the governor's office, and I did apply, not for general counsel, but I applied for a state agency board, and I was named to the board that oversees occupational therapists and physical therapists, so a regulatory board.
Sure.
And so I did my 6 years on that, and as I was getting to wind down off of that, I got a phone call from the appointments office, and they wanted me to become a Texas racing commissioner and be on the board of the racing commission, which I didn't even know. I wasn't sure what kind of racing they were talking about.
Sure.
I didn't know we had racing, I think, at the time, but I ended up serving for about a year on the racing commission, and it was through that and through the work that I was doing with his team that they called me and asked me if I would be interested in leaving private practice and becoming general counsel.
That is fascinating. So I want to get more of your history, but so people that serve on those boards, when you mentioned volunteer, it is volunteer, no pay.
No, in fact, you submit expense reports at your peril because obviously you're getting money from the government. And so you are entitled to get your hotels reimbursed to a certain amount and your travel reimbursed to a certain amount. And so I think that during the time that I was on either of those two commissions, I probably just ran those expenses through my law firm as kind of civic expenses, the kind of thing that we do. But yes,
Very noble.
there's no compensation whatsoever, other than the satisfaction of knowing you're helping keep our government lean and mean and moving in the direction the people of Texas
The
want.
reason so we talk on Business Decoded, we speak a lot about what people do initially when they're starting either their career or a new business. And it requires a commitment without a lot of pay. So you don't start a business and become wealthy.
Yeah.
You have to make that sacrifice. And so part of that was contributing to your state.
Yeah.
And then they recognize your ability.
I think
And
that's
then
right.
gave you that opportunity.
Yeah, if you were to talk to most of the Austin lobbyists, a lot of them got their start by taking jobs very young, early in their careers in state government at a much lower pay than what their talent set would warrant out in the private sector. But they did it because they wanted to contribute to the movement of in the direction of the policy in the state of Texas, but they felt like that was the training ground to get what they needed in order to ultimately become a lobbyist or maybe run for office in their own right.
So many of the positions I held early in my career, they were great positions, but oftentimes they were positions that no one else wanted. Right? Well, either I was having to create something new or start up something, and people were kind of settled.
Yeah.
Their income was good. They weren't, in some cases, willing to take a step back to start something new.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to.
Well, you sound like Mike Rowe. I thought you were going to talk about dirty jobs and how you crawled under people's houses exterminating. But no, the first job that I got out of law school was a job that didn't pay well by design, but it was a job that a lot of people want coming out of law school, particularly if you're going to be a litigator like I started my career doing, and that was working for a year or two. Mine was a 1-year appointment as a law clerk for a judge, right? And so those are highly sought after spots.
They are.
For a variety of reasons. One, they're sort of like a fourth year of law school because you're really learning in a very intensive way skills that as a first year associate at a law firm you're not going to be exposed to. But also it allows you to escape reality for one more year.
Sure.
You don't have the grind of law firm life. You can avoid that for a year. So I clerked for just a wonderful man, a great judge, and he's somebody I continue to be friends with today. He was a Texas Supreme Court Judge, Raul Gonzalez.
Okay.
And I learned a lot from Raul, and the pay was awful. The work was long and tedious but fun, and it was one of those deals where you're helping the Texas Supreme Court, and your judge in particular, make decisions that are going to affect the lives of 25 at that time million Texans.
Right.
And so even as a young lawyer, the weight of that, you understood it was a big responsibility. And so Raul, he had this fictitious character named Joe Sixpack. And if you wrote an opinion or a draft of something for him and it seemed a little too clever, like, hey, here's a clever way out, Judge, that you can position yourself as being in favor but not really leaning out too far because it's an elected office.
Right.
He's like, what's Joe Sixpack going to think when he reads that from me? Is Joe Sixpack going to think I'm trying to weasel out of making a hard decision? And so we used to use the Joe Sixpack test whenever we passed around drafts for the judge to look at.
I'd love to get your take on. So on the program, we've discussed a lot about business and then the policies, government that impacts business.
Yeah.
But I'd love for you later on to talk about the elected office of Supreme Court in Texas, because it differs from a lot of other states where it might be appointed.
Yeah.
But it's a different process. You are those positions are statewide elected.
Yeah.
Not
And
even
they're
by
partisan.
district. And they are,
Yeah.
which is very unusual. But take us back to where you grew up and how you ended up going to law school.
Yeah. So we were.
Why'd you go to law school?
Well, and so it's one of those things that my earliest ideas of what I wanted to do was to be a lawyer, which is kind
Really?
of funny because I didn't know any lawyers.
Sure.
We didn't have any lawyers in my family. I think the closest I ever got to a lawyer was the title company where my parents went to sign when we bought our second home. It was called Lawyer's Title, right? And it looked really nice. It was quiet and serene and had great furniture. But I knew enough even then that, lawyers seemed to be people that others in the community went to when in times of crisis, right? And I guess maybe respect, but that's kind of a weird way to say it, but maybe relied on, right? Like if they've reached the point where they can't solve something themselves, they're going to see a lawyer to help out with it. And so that had some appeal to me. And so honestly, other than maybe when I was 3, I probably wanted to be a fire engine, not a fireman, but a fire engine. I think if you were to ask me, I don't remember ever thinking I wanted to do anything other than be a lawyer, right?
Oh, fascinating.
And so, I did grow up in far west Texas, El Paso, which is far west, so far west that it's in a different time zone than the rest of the state. And, my dad was a civil servant working for the federal government, so it was just a very typical middle-class lifestyle. I was a newspaper boy.
Really?
I had the afternoon paper route. And, in a world before 24/7 news, the afternoon paper was
deal.
important because you were at work all day and things were happening. And so you could get your news, before the 5 o'clock news or the 6 o'clock news came on, you'd find out what went on that day. So I kind of took that job seriously. I remember one of the hardest delivery days for me was the day Roger Staubach retired because I would come home from school, open the bundle, and start getting my newspapers ready. And I would read the paper while I was getting it ready. And of course, the headline was Roger Staubach, my childhood hero, retired, which everyone kind of probably knew it was coming but me. And I sobbed for a little while. Then I remember thinking, my customers need to hear this devastating news. I've got to compose myself and get these newspapers delivered. So I was sobbing on my bicycle the whole time delivering this devastating blow.
You had a hard job because you had to make sure that paper wasn't damaged in your delivery. So if it was raining, I don't know how much it rained in where you grew up in El Paso, but the worst is getting either the paper damaged by the sprinkler or sitting in wet grass and you can't read it.
100%. And let me tell you, if you've ever been a newspaper boy, the one thing about a newspaper route is it is a business that you run yourself. You're buying the newspapers from the publisher, and then you're charging your customers whatever the paper company has decided is the monthly subscription fee, and that delta between what you paid and what you charge is your profit. That's how you make money. Well, you learn right away as a newspaper boy that if you put the newspaper on the porch, and if you keep it dry and you keep it from getting torn up as it's being tossed onto the porch, some, not all, but some customers will reward you with a tip at the end of the month. And so you can gross up your revenue through tips, over and above what you're making as a small businessman, right? It's kind of funny to think about that. So, yes, you do have to take care of the newspaper, but it's because you're taking care of your business and you're taking care of your bottom line.
Well, I think there's a trend. I've met with so many business leaders that started out delivering newspaper. Ross Perot. Yes. It was a big part of his first set of businesses. And
Brent Ryan.
Yeah, Brent Ryan.
Somebody needs to write a book, I think, about men and women who started their careers as paper boys, because you learn a lot at the age of 12, I can tell you that.
But now that's been lost. I guess there are other things for people to start now, maybe a podcast or a YouTube channel.
Yeah, they're all YouTube influencers now, right, I guess.
So when do you think your earliest memory was of the idea of being an attorney? Was it 2, 3 years old or 8? How?
8 had to be 5 or 6, maybe watching, I don't know, Ironside or one of these lawyer shows, and just thinking, wow, everybody seems to rely on that guy, right? And there was that kind of thing. And then that was it. Now, if you look at my first year in college, I certainly wasn't working toward going to law school.
Right.
I was working toward having a great freshman year with a lot of fun at Texas Tech University, but I eventually buckled down. And by then I knew enough about at least the path to get to law school to know that I had to do a better job academically than I had done my freshman year if I was ever going to make that happen. And
it's fascinating to see the return of shows like Matlock. You remember the old Matlock, and now it's back again.
With Kathy Bates,
With
right?
Kathy Bates.
I'm looking for. I haven't seen one of the episodes yet, but I bet it's a lot of fun.
So you wanted to become an attorney, and today here's what's important for me. I certainly think if there are business people listening, I think there's such an opportunity for them to understand what you and a firm like yours does to help them. So there are a couple ways that you help. One, helping them resolve complex issues from a business perspective, whether contracts or dealing with compliance-related issues. But the other piece that is your specialty is helping them to navigate the policy that is at a state level as a lobbyist. Yeah. And a lot of businesses, they don't understand it. I was on a trip recently to Michigan, and we were discussing that. We were discussing the importance of a lobbyist to a business. Yeah. And a lot of small businesses don't understand it. Right. So walk us through what that means, being both a lobbyist and helping businesses, but also your expertise in helping businesses with some of the other issues that they might face.
Yeah. Well, and, lobbying, like any other or like many other businesses, is a relationship business, right? And so
it is.
What just from the outset, what you would be looking for in a lobbyist is somebody who enjoys a good reputation and a good relationship and is well regarded in the area of government you're planning to deploy them, right? And so that's sort of a threshold issue. But businesses, those that are regulated, if you're holding a permit or you're licensed to do something, you understand that that's an area of government that you're going to be interfacing with. Right. And so at a very threshold level as a lobbyist, I can help clients, and my firm routinely does help clients sort out bumps in the road in that regulatory relationship, right? And a lot of times it's just a matter of getting someone's attention at a high enough level in order to solve the impasse or to get a better solution than the one that's currently being proposed by the agency staff. Right. But if we can't get there like that, then we may look to try to get a rule change within the state agency, and most agencies have a process for that, and that again requires getting attention, getting stakeholders, getting some momentum behind it, and then going and getting it done. But the one area that even businesses that are regulated forget is that sometimes if the rule can't be changed because the rule is mandated by law, then you go change the law in order to be more fair, right? I mean, if the outcome, oftentimes, even the state agencies will recognize this probably isn't the best way to do this, but there's not anything we can do about it because when the legislature wrote this law in the way back days, that's the way they did it. And so that's the part where a lot of companies don't even realize there's that next step where you can go in there and try to change the law. And sometimes it doesn't take much in order to give the agency a little more flexibility. And then, of course, you double back, and once the law has been changed, you start working with the agency to revise the rules.
And tell me this is important. I think you mentioned you're involved with the Chamber of Commerce beforehand. And what a lot of people, including business leaders, might not understand is that sometimes people go about making laws, or legislators, and they do the best that they can. But sometimes there are unintended consequences that they don't even know. And part of our responsibility, even as a business leader, is to recognize that it's having an adverse effect on my business that no one really anticipated and letting them know. And then like you still have to work through the legislative process to fix it. But coming to someone like you or your firm is an opportunity to help us find the right people to fix an issue that we didn't know would exist by the law that was created. Yeah.
In fact, you mentioned the Chambers of Commerce. The best first step that any business can take to keeping up with how the State House, in this case Austin, might be affecting them and their livelihood and their business is to join the industry trade association that's most aligned with their business, and we've got them all. We've got associations for doctors and nurses and chiropractors and construction, and it runs the gamut, right? If you Google enough different variations of your type of business and the word association, you'll find whoever it is in Texas that is handling your area from a public policy standpoint. And if it's a large and if it's a large enough industry, you'll even have local chapters that you can get involved in. And so you definitely want to be a dues paying member. And if you really want to get deep in the weeds about what's going on in Austin when it comes to policy affecting your industry, you would join the legislative committee or the policy committee of that association, and that will put you right in there in what they're looking at and why it matters and how they're pushing that information out to the members. But even if you don't do that, you will be hearing from that association about things going on in Austin, both regulatory as well as legislatively, that may affect your bottom line. And if it's important enough to you, you'll want to be sure your association is taking an active role in hiring a talented lobby team and making sure that the issue is being addressed and that whatever the industry's concerns are with that legislation are being handled.
So I've met with so many CEOs of growing companies, and it's not uncommon for them to say, Ronnie, I have zero interest in policy or government because it doesn't impact my business. And I generally say that's your first mistake. Right? Because almost everything that happens in government impacts the business. From taxation, different regulatory requirements. But in every business I've been, my first contact in either opening a new office or visiting our facilities as we're growing is to become active with the Chamber of Commerce. Because it helps me understand how that locality works, how the local leaders work, who are the local leaders, both in business and in government. And it's so critical, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
We interviewed a CEO of a Chamber of Commerce and had a great conversation, and the premise is really the same. I'd encourage every business, large and small,
Yeah.
to become an active member.
No, 100% on that, and to the idea that policy and government at the state level doesn't affect you or not, and I don't mean you, I mean some
Right.
CEO
Business,
we're talking about there. You know, we were talking a minute ago about Brent Ryan from Ryan and Company. He has built an empire on the issue of property taxes and franchise tax in Texas. And I assure you, every business, at least every business that's drawing revenue and has brick and mortar is paying property taxes and is paying franchise tax. And so even if you think nothing else in Austin is touching you at all, which would be wrong, but at a minimum, the tax and spend policy in Austin can very much affect how your business is doing versus how
Very
it
true.
could be doing. And so
Now-
I do think there is something for everyone.
That's true. Now,
at
you
the
mentioned
State House.
Brent a few times. Brent is a great guy. He's a friend.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that I can have him on the program sometime soon. So if he's
Brent,
listening.
Joan, get on the show, Brent.
So did you decide when did you decide that this was your area of law that you wanted to go? So when I went to law school, one of the top 25 law schools in the country, my focus was intellectual property. Back then, I saw the .com growing, technology companies were growing, and I thought that's where I wanted to be. I had no interest in some of the other forms of legal activity. Was that your goal to get in business-related law, or?
Well, you know, the law firms tend to be the place you want to start your career
Okay.
out of law school, even if you don't think you want to spend the rest of your life there, right? It's almost like an accountant wants to start at a Big Four if they can get there,
Right.
even if they don't want to make partner at one of those firms. And the reason for that is you're going to get the best training about how to be a lawyer in an environment like that, right? It's very difficult to understand all of the different skills and cultivate them over time if you're a solo attorney or if you buddied up with another guy you graduated with the same year, because you have no one other than each other or yourselves to sort of think through a problem. Whereas a law firm, you know, has got lawyers of a variety of different areas of expertise, but also different levels of experience. You've got the gray hairs, as we call them. I've become one myself, who can charge the highest rates if they're living their lives right. And then you've got, you know, the most junior incoming new associates, which tend to be very fungible. They're just very enthusiastic and hardworking, but there isn't a whole lot yet to distinguish one from the other. But it's through that process of working your way up in experience in years and being on teams playing different roles that you become a very good lawyer. And then from there, you know, if your goal isn't to be married to a timesheet and wake up every morning wondering where you're going to find 8 hours of billable time to put on that timesheet, then, you know, academia opens up for you, running for the judiciary, going in-house with a company, getting out of the day-to-day practice of law and becoming a business person and joining and playing a different role for a company. You know, all of those doors will open once you reach certain points in your development as a lawyer at a large firm.
So I want to talk more about that, but I'll say this before we talk about the business of law and law practice, because I think you made some really relevant points. So in the next show, though, I want you to come back. I want to talk about your parents, your dad, and your family.
Sorry, Dad.
I know, because you've had some unique growth experiences that you're now passing on to your kids. At one point, we were talking about how you travel with the kids.
Road trips.
And your road trips. But we'll save that for the next one. But the business of law and law practice is really fascinating. One of my early favorite movies was The Firm. No, and,
oh my!
I know.
It's a great book too. If you haven't read the book, it's an even better book than it is a movie.
The book is great, and then A Few Good Men. I love watching those law programs, which was inspiring to go to law school. But then when you look behind the curtain of law, it's a lot of work. Those early years, you're spending a lot of hours a week. I remember having to look at billable hours and putting in all the codes in the copy machine for each firm that each company that we represented and did work on. But talk to me about the business of law. But first, tell me, how large is your law firm, just to give some scope and perspective?
So Foley has got, now you're holding me to that. I feel like I'm
Oh,
at a
no,
recruiter, but Foley has got, on any given day, 1,100 lawyers, let's say,
Wow.
and then we probably have another 1,000 support professionals helping us, a very trained paralegals, legal assistants.
Incredible.
Everything that runs a gamut that makes a law firm run. I mean, we have people whose full-time job is to make sure lawyers can get their computers turned on and logged in and
Sure.
working, because no one is worse at technology than a lawyer, right? Because not only do we not understand it, we don't even want to ever learn it. We just
Right.
want it to work. And so, so we're a 2,000 plus operation.
It's amazing.
Like I said, our largest offices are in Milwaukee. That was the historical
Okay.
roots of the company. Chicago, Houston, and Dallas.
Okay.
And then we've got substantial offices in Florida, in California, in New York. And
Very
so
impressive.
we're where we need to be to help our clients. And then the lobby team, which I'm a part of, we have federal lobbyists in Washington, D.C. A lot of them either were elected officials or came from
Very
Capitol
nice.
Hill. But we do have state lobby practitioners in Florida, in Wisconsin, in Texas, and in California. So
Gotcha.
we are able to do state lobbying work in places other than just Texas.
So what was your first, you kind of described this earlier, but aside from clerking, your first law firm, what was that like? What did you expect as a new, in fact, baby lawyer is a real thing.
Yeah, no, I probably am not allowed to say that anymore. I'm sure HR probably doesn't want me, but I used to think of myself as a baby lawyer, and that's really what you are.
That's what they use. That's what they use.
You are, it took me, the first year that I got there, I had spent my year with the judge, but I already knew I was coming to that law firm. It was a precursor of what is now Lock Lord. It was the Houston-based precursor of 5 mergers ago of Lock Lord, right? Which I guess is now Pepper Lord or something like that. I don't even know what they call themselves. But I remember getting there just thinking, my goal is to make it through the year and not get fired, right? So whatever I need to do work-wise and relationship-wise, that's going to be my goal. And I really do remember coming in there thinking, gosh, I hope I can do this job. I mean, I knew this was important and hard work. And as a young lawyer, you want to show enthusiasm.
Right.
You want to show creativity. You want to show that you can take instruction. You want to show that that you're not so timid that if you see something that you're worried somebody has overlooked or isn't thinking about, you find a way to bring it up, one that doesn't make you look like you're just out there, spending time on rabbit trails, but at the same time doesn't suggest somebody missed something that some brand new lawyer found. And so there's a lot of politics, not in a bad way, but that goes into the thriving at a law firm like they would in any business. Right. In addition to that, though, you're also a professional with ethical obligations to the court, to your client, to your colleagues, and then certain responsibilities relative to how you deal with opposing counsel. And so as a young lawyer, you're trying to navigate all of that. And I remember the first time I was sitting in the library with a beautiful downtown view on a Saturday night at around 11, working on a motion. Then I was cleaning it up because we were going to get it sent to the client early the next week. And it felt exhilarating. I'm like, okay, so I'm here on a Saturday night, but I'm doing something like really amazing and really cool and fun, and I'm really a lawyer. And obviously the 15th time that happened, it wasn't nearly as much fun, but that's that's the job. I mean, and I like to describe it to younger lawyers as sort of like an apprenticeship. I said, we all are familiar with the concept of a master plumber, right?
Right.
Well, a master plumber didn't become a master plumber overnight. And even by going to school, you don't come out the other end a master plumber.
Very true.
That master plumber started as a plumber's assistant number 1, and then he probably became the prime plumber's assistant, and then he was probably a journeyman plumber. And then after several years, he looked up, and there he was. He had the skill set to supervise a team, to make decisions, and to plan an outcome, and became a master plumber. And that's sort of the progression of a young lawyer through a law firm within their profession.
That's amazing. So what's intriguing about it is there is a lot of complexity around being an attorney, just understanding the law, how to position, how to write your documents, how to present in a court if you have to, or how to present against opposing counsel.
Yeah.
But there's another component that I'm not sure a lot of people might recognize, you do have to be very entrepreneurial as an attorney because you have to go find your business.
Yeah.
Yes, walk us through what
Yeah.
that looks like. You actually have to, you're joining organizations so that you can build those relationships like you mentioned earlier. And then you have to generate business for the law firm, not just do great legal work.
No, and I'll tell you, the way that a lawyer generates their business can be as varied as there are lawyers.
Right.
You know, there are many lawyers, especially at large firms, who thrive and make their entire careers built around marketing their expertise to other lawyers at the law firm, right? Then we have other lawyers who just are such great social connectors that they make their business model originating the work through relationships that other lawyers do and do very little of it themselves, right? Now, most lawyers are a hybrid of originating work that either you do or someone else does, but marketing yourself to your colleagues to do work for their clients that you have the expertise to do. And so here in my role as a lobbyist, a fair amount of the work that I get, particularly within the state agencies, is actually referral work internal from my colleagues. And so as I plan on marketing myself or developing my plan to market myself, I have to think about marketing myself both internally as well as to the outside world. And so, you know, my landing page on the firm's website, in fact, I just updated it, so you all ought to go look. It's updated as recently. I think I might have inadvertently sent it to the team on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I feel bad after I hit send, and I had meant to delay it for like a Monday delivery, and I forgot to set it for a delay send, and it went out. So I'm sure, apologies to anybody who sees this who's on that team. But you know, and so you think about those things. You need to tell a story that the outside world wants to hear, but you also need one of your colleagues who maybe doesn't know you other than having heard about you from another colleague who'd worked with you. What are you telling them about what you do? Plus, you also push out content, especially as a lobbyist. You know, now that the session is about to start in January, bills have begun to get filed, committees are done with their work. We can start pushing out content to our partners, telling them these are the issues that are mattering in the state legislature. If you have a client that has even a passing interest in keeping up with those, now is the time for us to begin talking with them.
That's amazing.
Right.
I think I mentioned this to you. I came across an event hosted by one of your law partners at your firm, and I went to it. It was a hotel conference hosted by someone else on the team. It was a brilliant event, and I was explaining. I was there with a friend who had some students attending, so I was explaining to them the value in the event. And so you had investors from all over the country attending the event, and for this attorney and that team that practiced law in that hotel industry, it's a great way to market their expertise.
Absolutely.
So I was explaining to these young people, more than just this guy standing on stage for this event with several hundred people, it's a way for him to position what he does and to share his expertise with this big group of people nationally.
Yeah, no, listen, I mean, we've all been to plenty of conferences, right? And so, you know, if you're an attendee at a conference, your goal is to try to make relationships. And if you're on a speaking panel, you want to showcase a little bit of your expertise. And maybe over the cocktail hour, without boring anybody, you want to slide in a little tidbit or two about what it is you do. But when you're the person planning the conference and you're the one organizing who the speakers are and you're the one bringing in the guests, that is connection at another level, right? Because the default is, well, that guy must know what he's doing because he runs this conference, right? And so I think, you know, there are a lot of lawyers who would love to have a product like that, that they can call their own. But I can tell you that team and that lawyer in particular have worked very hard over a long period of time to turn that into what it is. And well deserved, and bravo to them. And I wish I was as creative as they are, you know, because it's really done well for them and the industry.
Sure. Now, David, I lost track of time. I didn't realize we were already in the end of our program. But what Business Decoded tips would you leave for either a business entrepreneur or a lawyer or a soon-to-be lawyer looking to get into the industry as an attorney?
Yeah, you know, I'm reminded when I took a business law course at Texas Tech, undergraduate, and it was taught by a lawyer in the community that I found out later that was one of the lions in the profession in Lubbock, right? Well-known guy in all of West Texas. And he used to tell us, your reputation is more important than anything else that you have to take care of in your career. He said, every decision you make, you have to stop and consider how that's going to affect your reputation. He goes, because once you've damaged that, he goes, it's very difficult to get it back. He said, and so he goes, lawyers have an obligation of candor to the court and of telling their clients information. He said, but even beyond those responsibilities, you really need to stop and think, if I'm shading the truth to opposing counsel, am I doing it in a way that's going to tarnish what they think of me the next time they come across me? And is that going to affect how my clients are received the next time me and that lawyer cross paths? And so I think for anybody, and particularly young lawyers, you need to really hold your reputation very closely and be sure you're taking very good care of that with regard to every decision you make and everything you do. And I think you like to think that lawyers are trained that way already, but it's worth being reminded of from time to time.
Agreed. David, it's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for joining us on Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman.
Thank you for listening to Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. Please be sure to subscribe and share and stay tuned for more incredible Business Decoded episodes.